Thank you.
Relatively new.
I'm very much later.
Yeah, too. In a new neighborhood? Enjoying a new neighborhood?
Well, it's mostly dirt.
Yeah.
Will be for a while.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting tonight. Today is April 5th of 2023, and it is 7:30. Would you please join me with a silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and do roll call. Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Grumney?
Here.
Mr. Neff?
Here.
And Mrs. Cooper. Here. All right, we have 5 present. We have quorum. With the absence of the mayor and President Tim Ghost, we will need to select a temporary president for this meeting tonight. So would anybody make a
I'd
motion?
like to nominate Ms. Cooper.
I'll second that.
All righty. All righty. Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
and Mrs. Cooper. Yes. All right, 5 days. Thanks, Amber.
We had a council meeting on March 15th, 2023. Would anyone like to make a motion on those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Grumney?
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
You don't have Mr. Grumney or Mr. Ghost listed here as here or not here for that meeting.
Oh, I will update that because they were not here. Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes,
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. Capel.
Yes.
Yes.
thank you. Moving on to the visitor section. Are there any visitors here that would like to speak? Seeing none, we're going to move to our committee reports. I'm going to start to the right with Mr. Grumney. Any committee reports tonight, sir?
I'll leave that to Dave to report out on.
Okay, thank you. Damon? I know you
Alright.
have one.
Yes,
You got a good
we had a very productive services committee meeting just before this. So I'll just hit on some of the highlights here. We had a visitor, Greg Beckert from Scioto Energy, came to talk about electric and gas aggregation possibilities for the coming year. He did say, and the big takeaway from this, I think, was that AEP is estimating costs this summer of around 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And the expected potential aggregated rate would be around 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So that can, a 3 cent estimated savings for those who can't do that math. And that could total up to as much as $24 a month for an average household usage. So we have asked him to go to gather information so that we can put together an RFP to potentially look at bringing that before council, I believe the beginning of next month. In unfinished business, we talked about Sunbury Estates trees. That's a rather old problem that we've had. Red maples in the area are kind of destroying the sidewalks. Steve is going to bring back some ideas for potential mitigation next month to our services committee. So we'll be able to talk more on a long-term fix for that. Ideally, that doesn't involve removal of the trees. Couple other quick hits here. We had a meeting in between last services meeting and this one where Mr. Gose and Mr. Hennessy and I, Mr. White and Hall, a couple others discussed how we would scope out projects between our two committees, the Services Committee and the Parks Committee. No big surprises there, but just a general delineation that the Parks Committee will handle parks projects, projects involving trails. Streets Committee will handle projects that involve streets and parking lots. So 2023 street project going to bid. We're trying to get that project in and accomplished prior to school starting. Mr. Whited had mentioned some potential upgrades to traffic lights that we're looking at as well, that don't necessarily come cheap, but sound really interesting, that would aid in vehicle detection, have some adaptive controls, maybe trigger traffic lights when only one car is at an intersection, things like that. And then we also talked a little bit again about potential traffic homing through Sunbury Meadows. Just some ideas, including putting out a temporary markings to see if that had the desired impact before we went as far as to do something permanent. And I think I hit on all the major things there. So, like I said, busy meeting.
Mm-hmm. And the wastewater treatment permits ready to install.
And that's the entire update.
Yeah. Less than 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin, you got a committee update for us?
Yes, and let me just say, Mr. Gose wasn't here and the meeting only lasted 23 minutes.
Tell us
So
everything.
do with that what you will. We talked about, we have community forums coming up on Thursday, April 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. and on Saturday, April 15th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And they're going to be down on the first floor of this building. And the focus is going to be J.R. Smith Park primarily. But there may be other questions that come up about parks in the area, what we can do with the whole center of town, the connectivity between the parks and the neighborhoods, those kind of things will all be some of the discussions. Mr. Whited and his group are working on some displays for that meeting. And if you're able to attend, we'd love to have anybody that's in the room be there. So
Can I ask a question about that? Mr.
Yes.
Breen, do you think it would be beneficial to have Mr. Hennessy or someone email council and ask who plans to be at which meeting, if at all, so that we know if we'll have a quorum at the parks meeting, or do you think it would be okay?
I guess it will probably be okay as long, I'm assuming, I don't know the format of the forum. So
mostly displays and just taking information from people. So
so
we're not going to call to order or do any of that.
correct. If it's not a prearranged discussion of the majority, if you have different,
Right.
tables and, just kind of there and everybody's around talking, but they're not talking together, then it's not a sunshine law violation. So just be aware of it, I would say.
Okay, thank
Like
you.
if we all show up to the farmer's market, we're not in violation.
We all happened to end up at the grill one morning.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best idea to all sit and say that.
We talked a little further about connectivity from here to trying to get the parking lot that's behind this row of buildings over here more use. A lot of people don't, I was talking to a business person here in the square yesterday, and she said, a lot of people don't even know that that's a city-owned parking lot. And so we're trying to work out some connectivity thing to get people to be able to use that parking lot, because there's a lot of parking there. And parking has become more and more an issue all the time. So,
Plus, that's where our EV station is, isn't it?
Yes,
Up there,
yeah.
so.
but we talked some about what's going on with Freedom Park. Mr. Piles has submitted a grant request for the Delaware Public Health District Healthy Living Grant that will involve some park benches that are more senior friendly and those kind of things, as well as some bike racks for people to park their bikes when they're coming through town and those kind of things. So that's pretty much what we talked about. We didn't have any visitors that came up with any stuff in that meeting, so.
Thank you for that, and thank you for chairing that committee in Mr. Ghost's absence. Mr. Neff, do you have a committee update for us?
Yes, I do. The Events and Commemorations Committee meeting was on March 22nd. We did talk about several different things as far as the events and permit applications. Trailpalooza, we decided that there was no need for any type of special approval for the Trailpalooza. We talked about the rental fees, which that did occupy a majority of the conversation as far as some of the neighboring communities who do residents and non-resident rates for renting out the town hall. We did, I don't know if we officially decided on the rates, but we did discuss having a resident rate of $25 an hour up to 3 hours, and then $100 for the day. Non-resident rate, $35 and $125 for the whole day. We also did select, but not ready to be announced, our first recognition award for our quarterly citizen recognition award. That person will be contacted. We also discussed a little bit about the power on the square and who's going to orchestrate the process for access to the electric. And I think with that pretty much covers everything we talked about.
Okay, thank you. So just if you're not familiar with our rates already, we didn't do anything to the rental rate for a resident. We kept that the same. The committee really felt that was important to keep this space an affordable space for our residents. And we just upped very slightly the rate for our non-residents. Amber told us that we actually get quite a few non-resident requests for the town hall downstairs. So I have a committee report from our zoning meeting Monday, March 27th. We approved a preliminary plot for Ravines at Meadows Ridge pending staff review. Mr. Barry Bennett and his architect spoke to the committee about extending his building at 130 Burr. Discussion mostly over how to make his entire building look cohesive and not like he's just adding on a nice new section to an older building. Mr. Whitehead is going to work with that, and one of our commission members, Mr. Bennett, was very happy to help in any way. So that was approved pending staff approval. And then we also heard a major commercial site plan for Sunbury Meadows and Peacock. They had been to the zoning commission before for an informal, so this wasn't a huge surprise to the commission. There's 3 spaces, only 1 space currently has proposed building, which is the learning experience daycare. The committee discussed, they had a full access intersection. Mr. Whitehead recommended changing that to a right-in, right-out. The applicant was in total agreement with that, and it passed pending staff review. Also, the committee, you may remember me saying this a couple months ago, that it came to our attention that the commission didn't have rules set in place, and we didn't have a chair and a vice chair set in place. So the commission approved of the rules, and our mayor was elected the chair, and Mr. Rick Ryba was elected our vice chair. So we are set to go on that. So that's it for our committee reports. We do not have a police report this evening. Mr. Piles, do you have an administrator report for us?
Yes, thank you. It was provided in the OneDrive. It's also in your packet. It starts on page 10, and I will just highlight a couple things. First thing I want to highlight is an addition to your package is a new and improved zoning report, and we'll include that on a regular basis as they meet. And it's I don't know where it starts. Does it start right
13.
after mine? Yeah. So some new information in there, and it's good. We have set up interviews for a very strong pool of people for the services superintendent and supervisor. And those are going to start on Monday and continue for almost 2 weeks because we have that large and strong of a pool. Let's see, I wanted to mention, as you probably noticed, demolition of the houses began this week. Again, that is grant funded through the county, through the state, through the federal government. And finally, I wanted to thank the Mayor's Court Public Service component. They sometimes offer an offender the opportunity to work off a fine or to do public service in lieu of a fine. And we had one of those gentlemen working last week, and his timing was immaculate, and we had him do some cleaning, but also collect all the fallen branches from the windstorm around the town hall. And they were 4 foot round, 2 foot high stacks when he finally got them to about 3 or 4 points in the park. And then the services department came by with a truck, quickly loaded them up, and they went away. And then Mother Nature tried to do it again to us, but it would have been even worse. But that's a nice addition that they made to the Mayor's Court, and it's both a value to the offender and certainly a value to us when we get a little bit of public service time that we can.
So that's
use for a good
new?
purpose. Yeah, I think they've been doing it for maybe a year now. But it's an alternative that's a good one. And I do appreciate when they ask me if I have anything needs done, because I usually find something. Yeah. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Piles? That sounds encouraging with all your applicants that you're getting. Are you getting any applicants for the part-time?
We've had a couple returning workers. But
I've seen some
still,
folks on social media, some moms are starting to ask on behalf of their college students. And so I'm really pushing. I'm like, hey, Brooklyn City,
for
college
sure.
kid, come on in.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to the engineer's report, I would just like to encourage you in your free time to really take a look at that zoning report from Alex, especially pages 16 and 17. I think you'll find really interesting. He has just added some new things, and I think you'll find it interesting. So big thanks to Alex for all of that. Mr. Whited, I know you weren't planning on being here tonight, but can you speak to the engineer's report a little bit?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Although our Parks Committee Director and Service Director kind of stole my thunder, so I can just do a mic drop. And I do have a few other things, but thank you. Those were very good summaries. I appreciate that. Those are a lot of what we're doing. The parks work on J.R. Smith and some others in the SS Street Improvement Program, which I tend to call the SIP, will be underway, and we'll get it teed up to the point where we can go as soon as we're allowed to spend the funding that we've got for that. We've done some continue to work on our thoroughfare plan, and aren't ready to release any of that yet, but that's still moving forward. We've talked about the speed study, and we talked about the intelligent transportation system. A few other things on Wes's report that I'll go over. Again, I'll do like our administrator and just kind of hit on some of the highlights. From the parks perspective, we are fully into design on the reservoir fishing piers and other improvements at the reservoirs. We are running into a few challenges with costs being significantly higher than we went to apply for the grant. So we may need to discuss that in the near future at the Parks Committee and with you all. The work for the hazard mitigation grant on Walnut Street, we've finally completed all of their questions and requests, and hope to hear within the next month or so whether that funding will be granted, and I'm quite confident it will be. Knock wood. Little Walnut Creek Interceptor Sewer, we're doing the preliminary planning and design for that. We're running into a few issues, just setting up the base information. There's a lot of projects in there. There's the roundabout that the county's doing. There's that work they just did at Domigan Road, and there's some other things. We're trying to tie all that information together in the correct coordinate system probably more information you need to know, but it's important to have that together in order for that to be designed right. And we prefer to design right. Magnolia Park, they've been clearing out there, and full construction ought to start relatively soon. Ms. Cooper mentioned some of the things that were approved at the last zoning commission meeting. Just the last thing I'll mention is that we have had what looks like about 6 right-of-way permits from Columbia Gas come in the last month. That's really just them putting their service lines in the right-of-way. But we do require them to permit. We do inspect to make sure they do restoration properly and that they're following all the regulations. That's my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Whited? Thank you. We have one resolution and it's a third reading, resolution 2023.05, a resolution revising the investment policy for the city of Sunbury pursuant to Ohio Revised Code section 135.14. This is our third time reading this.
Motion to approve.
Yep, thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Capel. Discussion? I just want to say thank you to Dana for always being available to the council and being able to explain very complicated things to us who don't have finance degrees. So doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
5 yeas, motion.
Thank you. Moving on to ordinances, we have one ordinance 2022.50, which will remain tabled. An ordinance approving, do I need to read this, Mr. Breen? If it's tabled?
No, if it's tabled, you don't need to read.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to new and unfinished business, the parade rules and procedures, best practices, we're still going to keep that on the table because we're going back and forth with our insurance. We're waiting, or we heard back from our insurance company and that information needs to get passed on to our mayor. And then we'll come back and Mr. Bream. And then also we see on here the city council strategic planning, May 13th. Was there anything specific that you wanted to say to that?
Get your homework in.
I know. It was longer than expected.
Do as much of your homework in as you can.
Right. And
Accepted.
has our deadline passed on that?
We're close,
All
but
right.
I'm sure that we'd like at least 2 weeks to kind of digest your expectations and your thoughts so that, you know.
You all asked for this.
Do we have that posted as a special meeting on the website?
Yes,
It is, okay.
thank you. Okay, new business, Mr. Grumney,
I have nothing, no.
Mr. Castle,
Nothing here.
Mr. Martin, any new business? Mr. Neff?
Nothing to report.
There was supposed to be an Easter egg hunt last weekend in Sunbury, but it got postponed because of the weather. So this Saturday will be the community Easter egg hunt at GRE. So be good to have anyone out there. So anything else from our staff tonight? Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Grumney and seconded by Mr. Neff. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
5